Namaste friends. Let us start today's discourse around an issue called clickbaits. I believe it is a term quite popular enough, a tool or a ploy or a trick utilized by many of the media agencies, many of the social media platforms, the business houses to create the news which might be a bit far from the truth or maybe the contorted truth to get the readers driven towards it. There have been a number of research articles published on the effectiveness of this tool and also increasing number of platforms and forums that have been using it successfully over years. You can see a lot number of such formal researches that have been conducted in the recent time talking about the clickbaits, the analysis of the clickbait in the V media era, clickbait as a strategy of viral journalism, and then obviously multiple news presentations that all of you, I believe, are quite comfortable having reading on a regular basis. But why are we talking about the clickbaits today? That's not the main topic of discussion today, but rather possibly many of you have already been subjected to or maybe a victim to one such clickbait which was dressed under the cloak of a science which have been subjected to us. I am talking about these news. I googled through all the newspapers and the media houses and many other agencies, and they all have focused on one aspect with respect to the research reports, which is nothing new and has been there for years, suggesting that one of the chromosome in our cells is under the gradual state of erosion. Yes, the Y chromosome. Given the preliminary level of understanding that the Y chromosome is connected with the gender development, precisely the male gender development, if any erosion in the chromosome is happening, the construed meaning could be that the males are gradually going to be wiped out from this entire world. And that is where the clickbait lies. You'll find almost every news item is creating that fearful question or sensational question to derive the readers into it. Let us say the Y chromosomes nears extinction. Will men disappear from the earth? Will men go extinct? Someone saying आने वाले समय में नहीं होगा लड़कों का जन्म. Someone has gone far enough to even make you visualize मर्दों के बिना कैसे लगेगी दुनिया. And they have given you the AI generated images of only the females in the world. There is someone saying, will men be wiped out? Yes, so what will happen to men? Saying, अब किसी को पैदा नहीं होगा लड़का. Someone going far enough to even suggest that the females want that to happen. They're saying Y chromosome is disappearing, but bad news, ladies. The male is not. People, this is the classic example of how media has avoided science and promoted sensation. So let us today discuss as to what is the reality of the research that has been on for years and what is the basic rationality associated. This idea of me making that video came when in the class a couple of my students asked about this news report that they had come across. I at that point in time was not updated with the news that is circulating. I only answered through whatever basic information that I had that yes, Y chromosome erosion has been a historic understanding that we have been knowing anyway. But in order to check out if there is any new development in that, I came back and I did my research and found that there is no immediate development which has solicited all these reportages that are happening all around. You will notice in most of these presentations, there are two universities that are being cited as ones having generated this fodder for thought. One, the La Trobe University of Australia and the University of Kent, Britain. Both of them have published these reports ages before. Like this one is the research article discussing the Y chromosome disappearing in 2011. The debate is even older rather. And this one in the La Trobe University on their website they published in December of 2022. So why now, all of a sudden, in the Indian media in particular? So I went back to these news reports and after careful observation, I discovered in one of the news media report, it suggested a study from the University of Kent has been making rounds on social media lately. So possibly our news agencies have picked this issue from some social media post which I didn't bother to go and check out, and have made a huge hullabaloo around it. Sensation obviously is the main goal that they were chasing. Men and the possibility of them vanishing. Nothing of that sort is indicated by any of the research. Let me make it clear from the very outset. Although I'll take you through the very fundamentals of life and the gender. So let us start from the very beginning, people. Any organism, be it human or plants or any animals, or rather as a matter of basic principle, any construction has got a particular basis or architectural design which it follows to create that construction. Let us say this is the architectural design and this is the construction all of you already know about. In the very same parlance, the recipe and what you make out of it, looking or reading at that recipe, the dish. Exactly the same is the story of any life, humans included. Whatever you see as the construction called human is just following the written information that we have in each of the cells of our body as what we call as genetic material, which is decoded to construct the human in the different forms that we look at. What is this genetic material? That people at the base is a chemical molecule made by joining many molecules together to make a very popular chemical substance called the DNA. That double helical structure that, if you remember having studied in your childhood as well. If you focus further into this, you will find the DNA, which is a thread of a molecule, uses 4 basic molecules in the infinite number of sequencing possible, the molecules called adenine, cytosine, thymine and guanine, to create huge number of sequences in the thread called DNA. Interestingly, for our reference, we have reduced adenine, cytosine, thymine, guanine, these are abstruse term for the non-science people, into just 4 letters A, G, T and C. And just understand, in the DNA, the arrangement of these letters is what that codes for specific information of every character that you can see in you and the people around. When I say character, it could be anything. The physical character, the shape, structure or an appearance of a people, hair texture, eye color, the nose shape, the skin tone, the height and so on. The physiological character, your ability to digest the food or not to, your ability to respond to a drug or not to, or many a times, many of the behavioral traits as well. Now, it is this DNA, people, which is wrapped around in the form of a compacted structure called chromosome. Visualize chromosome as a book that you have, and the DNA as the pages that are present in it. And on that pages, there are written letters, which for us are the sequences of A, G, C and T. Now, what we have to understand, that in a human cell, there are inside the nucleus many such compacted DNA structure, all of which together is referred to as a common term called genome. And when you read the sequence of these A, G, C and T across the genome, you will find a lot of text, which if reduced into a book, it could be something like this. I know it is absolutely non-comprehensible, but we try to find the data in it, the information in it. And then people, what is that sequence that gives you the information? Where lies the information? So just to summarize whatever we have studied so far, as an individual, you are made up of cells. Within the cells are a lot of amount of DNA. Within the DNA is the sequence of bases holding information, packed in the form of chromosomes. And now let me tell you, a cell has got many chromosomes. You can see a human cell has got a total of 23 pairs of chromosome, which means each chromosome or each book of information within the cell, there are 2 copies of it. So chromosome number 1, they are numbered because each chromosome has different informations. 1, 2, 3 till the 22, you can see there is no problem. 22 pairs. But on the 23, you can see on the screen that the 23rd pair of chromosome, we have a total of 23 as I told you, there is two possibility. One of the possibility is if both the chromosomes, what we call as X, the term X was derived from the simple habit of calling anything that is not known well as X. So it was called as X initially. And then we found another chromosome, so it became a logical next alphabet, Y chromosome. Now we find that the 23rd pair could be either XX or XY. And incidentally, on the very face of it, on a simplified understanding, an individual having XX as the 23rd pair turns out to be a female, while having XY makes a person to be male. Remember, like the characters that I was talking about, your nose shape, your eye color, your hair texture, your height, your skin color, and so on. Gender also, being male or a female, is also a character. And now people try and understand the entire text that we have on the DNA with 23 chromosomes, meaning a lot of DNA that you have in it, is not meaningful. That would bring me to one basic aspect of the nature that you'll find all across. So that's a philosophical truth. Nature loves redundancy or superfluity. They always create much in excess to what you could figure out what actually counts. Look at the cosmos. You will see that whatever that you can define in the shape, structure, mass, called the matter, together contributes only 5% of the entire cosmos. The remaining 95% is contributed by the popular dark energy and the dark matter. In exactly the same format, people. Is the entire DNA and the sequence of bases meaningful? No is the answer. What we have is the specific segments of these DNA that you can see in a particular screen. Let us say this one. You can see if this is DNA, the green fragments are the sections of the DNA which have got the letter sequence meaning something. Just as when you craft some answers, not every statement might be meaningful. Some might just have been written to create space or content in your answer. Similarly, you see in the entire DNA, there are only tiny segments which are meaningful, controlling a character, and those segments are called genes. Keep it simple. Genes are the segments of the DNA which, when read, will give you some instructions of a particular character. And the entire DNA that we have in the cell are not genes. As I told you, nature loves superfluity or redundancy. You'll find that with respect to the chromosomes as well. If you look at the chromosome, only tiny points on it represent the genes controlling the characters, remaining were earlier called by a very casual name called the junk DNA. So the remaining part of it is called junk, although let me tell you, it is not entirely useless. I have found a very interesting analogy which is largely comparable to the way your DNA has information stored in it. Can you see? Just as I told you, in the DNA, there are specific segments called the genes controlling the character. The remaining ones are called non-coding or junk. Is it somewhat very similar to the storage disk profile of my iPad, which I presented? Can you see? The storage of the iPad is much bigger than the individual occupancies of the file which have meaningful information. What that means? The remaining might not totally be junk. It might be the space to create new files. And if you are able to connect it, maybe it will be the space in your DNA in future, in evolution, to create new genes as well. And not only creating new genes, is it not possible that the genes or the files which are already stored will also get deleted? Exactly what that also keeps happening on a regular basis, which in particular has been reported in the Y chromosome, that the genes gradually over the millions of years of evolution has happened on the Y chromosome. But is this to suggest that no addition, no duplication of the file can happen in the future? Not at all. That's equally a possibility. So the duplication of the genes or creation of the new ones is also not ruled out. So let us take it forward. So what we now know, people, that the human cells have the genetic material called DNA stored in 23 pairs of chromosome. Chromosome is just the packaged form of DNA, nothing else. And then we know that within the entire DNA there are small segments which code as genes, which again, as you can see in this image, is similar to, if I believe most of you must have had this puzzle solved in your life. Just as in such puzzles you have so many letters, not every region of the letter might mean some meaningful word. The letter sequence that you can connect and find a meaningful word are rare. Exactly what happens in your genome. Only tiny segments wherein the sequence of bases are meaningful, called the genes. But the thing that I want you to carry in your head as we move forward, that the genes control characters. The chromosomes don't. That is the real crux of the issue. We'll come back to that later again. Let us take it forward. So as I told you, genes control the characters. Test for yourself while you are watching the video. Try rolling your tongue into a tube. If you are capable of doing that, that is because you have the right gene for it. And those of you who are not able to do that, it is again because you don't have that gene active in you. And that way, all the different characters, I have chosen some of the very easy identifiable ones, like the ability to, twist your thumb, your eye colors, your different hair color. By the way, this could be the result of the dye. I couldn't find a better picture. Or the male patel baldness, as it is called, or hypertrichosis of ear, which is the growth of the hair tufts on the ears that we have. Anyway, so this is also because of the gene, and in particular the gene is present on Y chromosome. So if someone says the Y chromosome is only associated with the sex determination, that's not correct. There are genes for other traits also. I've just shown one for you. And then of course the skin color, which I have taken this ad only to suggest that the tone of the skin is there in your genes, and any attempts of hijacking the genetic control by these chemical formulations might not be very much logical. Anyway, so let us go ahead. So what we now know, the genes are there, DNA, and the DNA packaged in the form of chromosome. Let's come straight to the topic now with this fundamentals. When did sex evolve and why? Both of course as the verb and the noun. So the term sex and that as a phenomenon for reproduction is something that is not new. It is as old as there are research articles suggesting 2 billion years ago that it evolved for the first time. Much before the sex as a process which has got the nerves or neurons that associate pleasure with it evolved. So that procedure came up earlier, right? Now, why did it so? So why did the sex came up as a procedure for reproduction? People, sexual reproduction is the biggest turning point in the evolution of life. You see, the sexual reproducing individuals have the luxury of creating the offsprings, all of which would be different. So what the sexual reproduction leads to is a lot of variations. So the kids that you produce are all different. Without going into the procedure how, let me tell you, a couple of humans, deciding to create a family, and if within that family, a theoretical example obviously, you produce 70 trillion babies, all of them would be different. Imagine the power of sexual reproduction. And hence, the nature prefers the two forms of sex, male and female. So yes, it creates variations, and then the sexual reproduction also causes changes in the sequences of the DNA called mutations, further adding to the variation. So yes, it produces more offsprings. The sexual reproduction will allow the success of producing more offsprings for the simple reason that if you are able to generate more variations, it is quite possible that many of them will be able to survive because the environment will suit them. So that will ensure, give the guarantee that you are able to produce the offsprings that can survive until they produce theirs. So yes, a very simple example. Have you not watched the litters of the dog? All of them, despite the only two parents, look different. And that is because when the male and female decides to mix up their genetic information, it creates novel combinations and creating the variations in the offspring. So what is the take home from this? We know that sexual reproduction is something which is very valuable to the nature. So nature would possibly not think of obliterating what is going to be well suited to it. So now coming to the very basic thing, that the determination of sex in the different organism, that is, there is no one mechanism. It is not like in the humans XX, XY and same for all the organism. What we now know, that the different organism have followed the different methodologies, different routes, different ways of developing the sexual dimorphism, two forms of the gender. You see, there are organisms that may be completely dependent upon the environment for their sex determination. It's quite popular in turtles, alligators, wherein at what temperature the eggs get hatched, they decide what gender the offspring is going to have. Similarly, in humans, it is the chromosomal determination as we see, XX and XY. And in the same manner, you see, in some of the, in the birds rather, just as in humans males have XY and females have XX, they have the males having the two chromosomes same and the females different. And that is what is called as the ZZZW system. Just a different name because they have the flipped arrangement as we have in the humans. So the take-home message from this is that there is no one route to the development of gender. So that again suggests nature is creating multiple ways to get the sexual dimorphism. There is no one that if that vanishes, there are other doors closed as well. I have just added this, that look at the different organisms and the different ways in which they will develop the sexual dimorphism, meaning having two forms of gender, male and female. Now coming to how is the sex determination in humans happen? I have largely already hinted through my discussion. But then in 1905, the geneticist Nettie Stevens, she discovered that the Y chromosome has got some important genes which are important for the determination of the gender male. But that was just the beginning of it. So let us see how in the process of reproduction the entire creation of the young ones happen and how is the gender decided. Since people, we know that, I'll just take it to the screen and rather explain. You see, a male and a female, a male has 22 pairs of chromosome plus the 23rd one, which is X and Y. Similarly, the female has 22 pairs of chromosome plus the 23rd one, which is X and X. Whenever they have to engage in reproduction, they both contribute a cell which is a unique cell in itself. No other cell is like that. What is the uniqueness of that cell, people? That the gamete cell, which for the male is sperm and for the female is ovum. Please remember that they, unlike all other cells of your body, every cell of your body has 23 pairs of chromosome, double sets of information. But the sperm has only 23, which means the first 22 could be any of, any of the first chromosome, any of the second chromosome, making the, 22 chromosomes. Plus, it may either have X or it may have 22 plus Y, which means when it comes to the 23rd pair, there are two types of sperms that you produce. The one having X as the 23rd chromosome and the another having Y. But can you see, the female, since it has only X chromosome to offer in this, will contribute only one type of ovum with respect to 23rd chromosome. So yes, what would that be? 22 chromosome plus the X, which means every single time the fertilization, whereas when the two mate has to happen, there is equal possibility of this sperm matching with this and this sperm, fertilizing this. Now what would be the result in the first case vis-a-vis the second case? Have a look. When the sperm having 23rd chromosome as X fertilizes this, they get 22 plus 22, 22 pairs plus X and X. So the 23rd pair is this much. That realizes the goal of having 23 pairs of chromosome. This under normal situation will be destined to become a female. But you see what happens if the second case happens. 22 plus y plus 22 plus x, that leads to people. 22 plus 22, we can write 22 pairs plus one of the chromosome X coming from the mother, another Y coming from the father. So we have 23 pairs of chromosome, but the 23rd pair is what is called as non-homologous. You may ignore this term, but you know that yes, they two are not similar. And hence, this individual is committed to become a male. But coming back to what I have already given to you, it is never the chromosomes which decide the gender or any character. It is the genes that do. We'll come to that. But then, let us come back to what the news has been and why is it generating so much of noise and news around. So what is the conundrum all about? People, it has been observed that the 23rd chromosome, that is XX in female and XY in male, have not always been like that. In the past, in evolution, millions of years ago, before 160 million years ago, the 23rd chromosome were also like the 22 chromosomes, both same in both the genders. But then gradually in the males, one of the X chromosomes started shortening, erosion that happened, and what we have today in the course of that 160 million years ago, when the X and Y chromosome became different, and what we have today is the Y chromosome, an absolute diminutive version of what the original size and shape was. In the erosion of that space, DNA is what space? We have lost many of the genes as well. Each chromosome may have many genes. For example, the X chromosome has over 1,000 genes of them. I repeat, what is a gene? A segment of DNA which codes for a specific character. So what we today know, that the Y chromosome is so badly shortened that from near about 1,000 to near about 50 to 70 genes are only there. And one of the gene which is of prime importance that we keep talking about on the Y chromosome, this is where all of you should get absolute focused. If this is the Y chromosome, one of the gene which is present on the Y chromosome at this point, let us say, is called SRY, or sex determining region on the Y chromosome. That's why it is called SRY gene. Every gene, people, codes for specific proteins, and the specific protein that this codes for is called testis determining factor. Name suggests a lot. So what we have is the SRY gene coding for testis determining factor, which means it gives the instruction, go form the testes. And once the testes starts forming, the development of that embryo into a male sex kind of gets committed. But the most important factor that you have to remember so that you can debunk this entire mystery getting created and the sensation getting created, that like many characters, people, like your skin tone, your height, the gender also is not determined by only one gene. So is SRY gene the only one which is controlling the development of gender? The answer is no. There are many genes, and that too in a cascading fashion. One telling the two, telling the three, telling the four, ultimately the maleness or the femaleness getting to happen. We'll come back to this. But before that, let me get you the clarity. After all, why the Y chromosome has been at this misery of having got eroded over the years. People, for the simple reason that all the 22 pairs of chromosomes that we have, they are similar. And when they are similar, and what do we have on the chromosomes? The genes. Genes control characters. So each pair of chromosome, let us say pair number 1, pair number 2 and so on, they keep exchanging information with each other. And when they keep exchanging their DNA, they keep creating new set of information and variations. So each chromosome has always kept variations on so that at no point in time environmental changes have been able to wipe them out. But you see, it is as much a social truth as it is on the biological or chromosomal level. There is no give and take between the non-equals. Since X and Y are non-equals, there is no exchange of their information, and that means the Y chromosome, whatever information that it has, will remain with it. So no changes happening much, and that is why the evolution it is subjected to through the changes of environment has caused that erosion. So remember, no recombinations happening in the X and Y chromosome, making Y gradually get eroded. But then what if, let us say the worst happens, there are suggestions that with this the Y chromosome might get to vanish in 11 million years. But what if this happens to be real? Are there strategies available? People, that is where let us see what do we have as the options of the different organisms. Now, there is a particular mode of reproduction called virgin birth. That could be an examination important topic given the snowballing of this issue. Virgin birth or parthenogenesis as it is called. I'll just write it on the board. Parthenos, the root word means maiden or virgin. So when you say parthenogenesis, it means the same individual is capable of producing the young ones without having had any mating exercise conducted with the other. And interestingly, in the biological world, there are few species that we have which successfully do that, either as an obligatory behavior, meaning that's the only behavior they know of, or as facultative. At times when the other partner is not available, they can do it on their own as well. So let us say some of the examples, like some of these snakes, this Brahmini blind snake, the Burmese python, the boa constrictor, they are facultative ones. They may go for parthenogenesis. So the female will produce the egg and the egg itself would be capable to produce the young one. And there is this one in the Mexico called the whiptail lizard. That is also capable of parthenogenesis. The females may create the eggs and hatch it into the young ones. Now, this might have created fears in you as to if this is possible in these organisms, what about humans? But I'll tell you why it is not worthy of generating that fear. But before that, what if Y vanishes? One of the possibilities is this. The other possibilities could be what is already available. You see, there are mammals, the monotremes, the platypus, which are egg-laying mammals. There are some frogs, which are amphibians, like Amazon has got many such species. You know what? They have many sex chromosomes. So instead of just having two, there are many. That's one possibility of the organisms developing many of the chromosome. And then the most important, observation that you have to make is such a degeneration of the Y chromosome has possibly happened in a particular rat of the, Japanese island called the Amami spiny rat. In these, there are males and females, but there is no Y chromosome. That gives you a certain fact that one, Y chromosome is not an essential element of the male gender. And second, the same gene which is there on the Y could be independently created on another chromosome. You remember I have told you, you have excess of the space. Your genes occupy in your entire storage space of the genome just about 1.5%. And I told you, nature loves that excess. So now you know why. It leaves that scope for creating more genes in it. That's one possibility as well. So, let me now give you the confidence as to why the parthenogenesis is not a possibility for us. As I have told you that the character, gender is controlled by many genes in humans. The first gene in that, called the SRY gene, initiates the process for others in a cascading manner, which is to mean that it is important to check where are the other genes located, in which chromosome. So you see, the SRY gene is located on the Y chromosome, but then there is, no need to remember any of the genes that beyond SRY that we are discussing. SRY could be exam important also. So you see, there are so many number of genes, there is not only one. And all these genes are at different autosomes. This one is at 9, this one is at 11. A very important gene called SOX9 is at chromosome number 17. SOX9 is what that gets the stimulus from SRY to express and take it forward, which is to say that Y does not have a sole control on the gender determination. In case, even if SRY is lost, there are a number of possibilities that the new functions, new ways of exciting the SOX could be taken care of. And that is why in the human system, that cascading mechanism is going to be such a foolproof, wherein even if that one goes, there is alternate routes of exciting 2 or exciting 3 for which the particular gender may get determined. So that kind of dispels the entire, mysticism that is created around it. Is Y chromosome erosion directly related to the erosion of the male gender as a whole? Obviously not. I also saw that some of the reports taking it a little too far, they even went on to generate that, suggest that this is the reason why we are observing more births of the females in the society. I don't know what data are they particularly referring to, because the data that we have, if at all we have to say, the ratio between male and female, let me tell you, the United Nations Population Fund's data for the natural sex ratio at the birth, natural means without fiddled by the human intervention, is 950 female births to 1000 male. So if at all we have to see a pattern, naturally we create more male. Not much of scientific understanding on why that, or is it even statistically significant. But then it kind of punctures that argument that we are observing any such more female birth. If at all you are basing your understanding on the National Family Health Survey report, which says that females number has increased, remember that is talking about the government interventions through the various schemes, policies. That is not called natural sex ratio. So yes, there is no change in the sex ratio that we have. And let me now give you something all the more interesting. Why we have got not to be bothered about the Y chromosome with particular reference to the gender. Don't we have, or I believe all of you have followed the Olympics this year. It has been loaded with the controversy of the gender and the sex of the individual participating in the category. Two particular boxers, the Algerian boxer and Lin Yuting of Taiwan, both of them were born with XY and they are developed to be females, further establishing, is it the Y chromosome per se which is important in the sex determination or the genes? It is the genes. They are born with Y, but their Y does not have the SRY gene. As I have told you, deletions and additions of the files from your storage keep happening. It happened for them. So what we now know, that gender as a concept is too fluid to be reduced into a chromosome or a gene. It is a multigenic, property, and it is very difficult to propose that the males will get extinct. And then, given that it is too fluid, let me, as we finish this discussion, talk about the different hues that exist between the binary male and female, the intersex, or also the transgenders. So there are various ways in which the gender, shades or differences get created. Maybe the entire discussion of this, which is another interesting topic, for some other time, but this is just to create this understanding that gender is too fluid to be, produced into such articles whether a particular gender will exist or not. I don't think there is even a remote possibility of that. And to further alleviate the fear of maybe the males who have been busy sensationalizing this, there have been scientific achievements last year itself. If there was any news that, required the media coverage, is this, that we today have the ability through the biotechnology, stem cell engineering, to create the egg cells which are produced by the females to be produced by the male, and they have been successfully able to create a mice from 2 males only, motherless creation. So the opposite in the labs could also be done, while in 2004 they had also done the same with 2 females also, fatherless mice born. But these are all experimental creations, not anything which the nature in any of the condition will favor, because they lack one most fundamental aspect, variations, diversity. Nature loves diversity. Sexual dimorphism is a result of that diversity. So before we end, while I was going through these articles and some of the media presentations and all, what was most interesting for me was to go and read in the YouTube the different statements or the comments made by the people. While on one side it generates humor, you can just pause the screen and read for yourself. There are extremes which I could not present on the screen, but when you read them, you only feel bad if at all you are serious about generating through the newspaper reportage or through the presentation, initiating logical, rational discussion in the society. I did not find many of such comments in the media. So yes, I mean, beti bachao, say beta bachao, beta padhao, and then multiple others. I'll not get into that. So that brings us to the most important responsibility, each one of us, both as the knowledge seekers and the knowledge disseminator, to repeat the fundamental duty that we are all responsible for staying true to, of developing the scientific temper, the humanism and the spirit of inquiry and reform as per the Article 51. I hope this sounded some bit of genuine and rational to you. I will keep adding more information in the related areas in the coming times. Thank you. Have a good day.